So today, what I want to get back to is really kind of the meat of Blueprint. I think definitely one of its distinguishing factors, which is going to be generating code within the controllers. So, so far, it's definitely done more work as far as generating, the factories, the models, things like that, the migrations. It's filled all that data in. But there are some tools that already exist, some command line artisan commands that you can use to generate those. And of course, Laravel itself generates stubs. So while it is, I think, more robust, it's not necessarily, new. But this controllers bit, I think, is really what's going to set, again, Blueprint even farther apart. But of course, because of that distinguishing factor, this is where things start to get a little bit hard. So last week we did this controller generator test, outputting this README example that we're looking at, and right now it just generates that specific controller. So in this case, the post controller, and we saw that it generates an empty index and store method. So we can actually see that in controllers readme example.php. So let's take a look at that. Controllers readme example. Yeah, let's go here. And we can see that it outputs this store and this index request, right? Or action, and then it injects the request. Now, ideally with these, even though we're parsing these, we would have this get output as well. So what I would really like to see when all this is said and done, and I don't think we'll get this far today, but I'd like to see something like post all, and it knows, of course, to probably import this as well. And then finally, it does like a return view, what do we call this, post index, and it'll do like a compact. Even though I'm not a huge fan of compact, I think it's going to be the easiest approach. So this code would actually generate this and include the app post there as well. So that's what we need to start doing now. So again, putting all this back to the way it was with just the little slash slash, we need to fill in this to do, which is basically start looping over the statements that we parsed out, which is each one of these lines is a statement, and start outputting the real code. So, if there's validate, there's some special things that happen, like we're going to replace this injection with the appropriate form request, which we've already generated. Queue, we're going to output the queue name, dispatch, and then whatever data, and as we saw with queries and views. So lots of work to do here. So again, I don't know how far I'll get today. I think really my simple goal is probably going to develop, maybe spike a little bit and develop like an approach for what I want this to look like. And that might be as far as I get today. So we're probably going to end with a failing test. And quite frankly, we're probably going to have this failing test for a majority of the week because, again, this is a pretty good amount of work to do. So let's actually go back to where we were because this is legit. So let's write this fixture to be the appropriate code that we all know from Laravel to see this work correctly. So I'm just going to copy, or actually I'll move this over here so we can kind of compare these a little bit better. Okay, so this takes validate. So that would mean that this should get a app HTTP requests and then a post store request because the naming of that was the post controller, the action, and then whatever request suffix. So that would take care of the validate line. We're immediately going to see a saving of post. So this should be smart enough to know, I would say based on the store request, it's not update, right? So it's store, so we know this is new. So we should be able to see something like post, post create, and then do like request only here. And we know based on the validation what's getting pulled in. So we'll say like title and content. That might be a bit might be a bit pushy for version 1. So you know what? I'm gonna say v1. I'm gonna make the call that v1 is gonna be simple and just pass in all the request data. And based on that, it kind of gives you a jump start. So there's save. Let's send this. So this should output a mail 2, and then send, and then this will be a new review notification. And this should get data, so that's going to get the post. And this goes to post author. Okay, so again, all things that are happening based on this data. We're going to dispatch a sync media. So we should be able to say something like, I forget the syntax of this. I think it's sync media. And then it's like dispatch. And then I think you can pass it the data. Or it's like a with. I'm not sure. Let's check the docs. I want to make sure that uses the modern syntax. Laravel dispatch job. All right, dispatching jobs. No, that's legit. We dispatch it with the podcast. This is all just syntactic sugar for, I guess, newing one up. Okay, we're also going to fire a new post event, so we should be able to say something. I think they use fire still, or events. So we got custom event dispatching events. There we go. So this will just be event new post with post. And then we're going to flash the post title. So this should be request session flash. And that'll be post title. And its value is going to be post title. And then finally, this will do a redirect. Whoops, return, redirect, route, post index. Okay, so let's review this real quick. And I definitely need to finish up a lot of these imports. But this store should ultimately, this should be the output code from this. So again, got a long way to go. And there's a lot of variance in some of these methods. So like, as we saw, save is a little contextually aware. It knows based on kind of the cruddy actions that you use, how that should be written versus, in this case, calling create versus calling like just save on an existing model. So, and then query, of course, can be just crazy. There's all sorts of things we can do with query. So again, that's actually a statement I haven't even finished writing yet. But just to demonstrate like how much code comes out from this syntax, and you have to remember that we're not only outputting, you know, just this code here, but we're generating this form request with everything it needs. We're generating the views if they don't exist. We're generating a stub for these mailables and events and jobs. So a lot of code that kind of webs out from this very, very, you know, simple 20-line definition. So again, just something that I think is going to help differentiate Blueprint. All right, so let's get all these imports correct. First of all, we're going to need the mail facade. We'll need the sync media facade. Whoops. So that, what is that going to be? That's going to be use app jobs sync media. And then we also have the same with events. And alphabetical order would dictate that. And this will be new post. All right, cool. And everything else should be there. Oh, the mailable. That's right. So this will be use app mail that. Cool. Okay, and of course these don't exist. We're not going to get good completion here with PHP Storm, but this should be the final bit I expect. So when we run this, we definitely are going to start to get a lot of errors. And like I said, this will take all week to probably finish this test and get it passing. So let's this is where we can start spiking though. So let's do this. Let's bring this up and run run this a little bit cleaner. Let's take this test and we're going to get the exception now, and let's read into this. Okay, so basically it's getting an exception because these don't match. Our output doesn't match what we expect. So this is exactly where we want to be. And what we could do is, for now, just start kind of doing something really simple and naive. So we can just say for each statement, or well, body as statement. And for now, I'm just going to do something a little bit silly, where we'll say something like this template. You know what? I'm not going to want to add this until later. Let's create a new variable called method, and it's going to get template. And it kind of immediately has this string replacing and so forth happening. So let's pop that, and let's call this method. And now what I'm going to do is basically do a string replace. So what I want to do is just do a real simple, like naive kind of like, let's call this statements is equal to, you know what? I don't like this wording. I'm getting stuck on it. Let me change this up. Let's do body equals nothing, and we'll say something like if not empty, on body, then we would want to have method be a str replace for that indentation that we're getting ready to do. So it would be like, I think I called it body in the stub. Let's go check it out. I didn't call it anything here. That should be okay. That should be okay. We'll start with this approach, and we'll replace this with body, and that'll come out of method. And then finally we'll overwrite that back. So we really shouldn't have changed anything here. This just needs to come up here. But what I'd like to do now is basically say something like body dot equals whatever the class name is, get class of the statement, and then tack on an end of line. So this is going to output each one of the statements as the body, but it's not like the actual output, of course. It's just this. It's just like, we can see that we're getting the right statements, right? So we can see things like we're getting the query statement, the render statement, validate statement, send, dispatch, fire. This also lets me know that I actually am missing a two. So flash and redirect are not here. Neither is save. Interesting. Okay, so there's even some statements that we still need to finish. So again, this is really going to drive all the rest of the things that need to happen with Blueprint. So let me also trim this. I noticed that wasn't the best outputting there. So let's, and then I think in another class I made like an indent. Yeah, I want that. So we'll do something here like SelfIndent equal or dot. And let's make this, and this should simply be however many lines we have here, which is 8, I believe. But let's get that cleaned up a little bit. All right, cool. Much better. So even though this isn't outputting like the statements that we're ultimately expecting, the point is that it is picking up the statements that we actually have, it's indenting them correctly, and it's loading them into the correct spot. So we're going to work all week long to kind of make these be, you know, the real things. But for today, I think what I'm going to do is really just try to get a pattern that makes a little sense here for me. So if we go back and look at the controller Lexer, it actually takes a statement Lexer. And this statement Lexer, I think there's a lot of opportunity for it to be refactored even simpler. But the point is that instead of making a query Lexer and a render Lexer and a flash, Lexer and a job Lexer, I just made one big statement Lexer, and kind of everything's in here with just this currently little switch statement, which I think this can get packed down pretty easily here in just a bit. But with that said, I kind of want to follow the same pattern. This is pretty simple, and it's very likely when outputting this code, I may outgrow this. But for now, I think this will be okay to kind of start with the same pattern. So let's start mimicking that. We don't necessarily have a test specifically for that, but we will have to update our test to take more things here in this generator. The other problem with the generator as well here is that this follows a very strict contract or interface. Because of that, it's not so easy to inject other things. So I'm not too sure how well this is going to be used. I guess it makes it difficult is what I'm after. So it seems like a simple thing, but if I wanted to do something here like this, statement generator, generate, and then send it the statement and have it do its work, this isn't so easy because I can't really inject that without changing the contract, and I really don't want to change the contract. It'd also be nice though if this was more testable. Like I could finish this test today if this were injectable, because then I could just say, oh, you got a query statement and you returned, this simple thing. But we saw even in the command Lexer, or the controller Lexer, it was actually kind of nice to let it, parse everything. So I could make like a register method. I could make something like, register generator. I don't know. The other reason I'm being really hesitant about this is the statement generator. It doesn't, it's going to get pretty nuts. It's going to get pretty large. Like, I think some people, let's go take a look at this. Let's take a look at like the query statement just for giggles. It's rather empty, so let's actually not look at that one. Let's look at the send statement. Some people might even just have something here, like a public function output, and like this just knows how to format itself. I haven't gone down that road with any of the other objects in the application. That's not to say I couldn't, but that would be kind of like the easiest, most polymorphic kind of thing would just be like statement, output, and it, it just knows how to output itself. Now, I think a lot of people also, though, even though they would do that, I think you have an equal number of people that would argue that, like, well, a statement shouldn't really know how to, like, output itself because there's, like, a whole lot of context about what it means to be output. Like, which controller are you in, like we saw, and now you're kind of mixing and matching these things. And that's why I think I'd rather see something like flip this all on its head, like an outputter, takes a statement and it like generates, or formats a statement or something like that. And this is like a, controller outputter or something like that. This is a terrible name, but you get the idea. So it'd be nice if it knew how to do that to kind of separate that responsibility. So, and I definitely don't want to put it like all right here, but it is very, very contextual because all this depends on, being a statement within a controller. You really can't be anywhere else, which is kind of assumed. Um, so I think that's a bit of a tangent. Okay, decision time. um, and I'll definitely take input from the audience now that we're all in this code quagmire on a cloudy Monday afternoon where I'm tired. So feel free to make your suggestions if you have them. If not, I am going to make the simplest choice. I think the simplest choice is to start having the statement know how to output itself. It requires no changing of current code, and it wouldn't affect any other of the tests because this is just a brand new method. So let's do this, and let's do this until kind of like the wheels fall off. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so what I'm going to do is add a method to this statement. And do these things adhere to any kind of contract? No, they don't. Okay, cool. So let's see if it's possible to do just one of these today, and specifically one that I know is going to cause some challenges. Let's do send. Send's the most robust that we have right now outside of query, for a few reasons. First, it requires imports. So it's going to have to import a couple different things. It's going to have to import the mail facade. It's going to have to import review notification. There's also some parsing that needs to happen from this to and with. Not really parsing, it's already there, but it's one of those things where I'm at least going to have to like turn that into like an arrow, So nothing crazy, just, something that can be used. So I think this is a good one because that's also going to kind of show us the limitation of doing this kind of approach. Because I can already tell you that it's not as simple as just doing something like body output, statement output. Like, because this statement's going to need to return, an object of some kind. And then this object is going to it's going to have things in it. So it's going to have like imports. It's going to have the, you know, output, maybe even more things that it needs to do. So that's why I don't know, I'm kind of starting to lean towards the fact that, like, as crappy as it is, the controller generator might just need to be responsible for outputting all the different types of code here. So let's just see. Let's play this out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to this send statement, and let's just make this work for today. So, and then we'll kind of talk about the pros and the cons of this. So I'm going to close a lot of this because we have a test that's going to, show us, close all in group, thank you. It's going to show us kind of how far we got with this thing being generated or not. So we know right away a couple different things. So we know that the output is going to, or let's call this like code. Let's just call it code for now. So we know that it's going to have mail, and that's about all we know. So we probably also know that we're going to need to generate something. So this is going to be the mail piece of it. So we could say a couple things here. We know that we have, I guess we could see if we have a to. So we can say if this to, then I would want to do a code dot equals to. And it's like, you're kind of going to have like the chain when you do this. That's interesting. Okay, so we're going to do to, and then we're going to output a $, and then the output of replacing any kind of dot within this to. So we can do an str replace dot, whoops, hello. Oh my God, PHP Storm, what are you doing? How did that happen? All right, there we go. So dot with an arrow, and this will be 2. All right, and then if we have that, we know we're going to want to chain on an arrow, and then we'll basically always do a code dot equals send new, and then whatever the thing is they said to send. So that'll be dot mail, mail, and we'll want to dot that up with a closing bit, and then we can do code dot equals, well, this is where it gets a little interesting. We'll do this, and close it out with that, and we'll return code, but we need another if statement now to know, did they have any data? And this is the one that gets a little funky, because like data could be like not a string. I think what I'm going to assume for now is let's go to one of these generators and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. I think one of these makes like a $sign. Yeah, here we go. It just like loops over all the properties and then like implodes them, like this build parameters method. So let's just borrow this for a minute. So we'll say this build parameters and pass it in data. Cool. So it's going to loop over those all those parameters. It's going to basically just put a $sign in front of them and then implode them with a nice little comma space. So let's run our little test again. And we definitely got an error because query statement output doesn't exist. So let's fix that for a second. And whoops, that was a controller generator. Let's fix this for a second by saying something like if method exists, I think you can do, yeah, there we go. Method exists, statement, output. So if the output method exists, then I'm going to say body dot equals the statement output dot php eol. Else, just do our little class name output for now, because not everything has an output yet. So let's just kind of see where we land here. Okay, good. Look at this. We have this mail to post author, arrow send, new review notification post. That is minus a closing parenthesis. Pretty much exactly what we want. So let's... That's a little funny. Oh, no, it's not. It does need to, always. Okay, I was trying to figure out where do I put that closing parenthesis, but always there is right. Okay, cool. So again, this isn't going to work for every mail case. That's where I'd want to add some more tests, but again, we're just kind of spiking right now. So I think this is a good indication of like how we can generate the code. So if it were that easy, I would probably make these outputs just do, or just like I'm doing now, just do a bunch of these. So this would just be like the output. And if I need to pass in like some controller context or whatever, that's fine. But it's not this simple. What needs to happen here now is I also need to import the mail facade. So this would have to also kind of import mail facade. And I would also need to import whatever new mail thing I injected there. So basically import app mails or mail or whatever it's called. And then, you know, whatever this .mail was would have to go here. So you get the idea, but the point is there's like multiple import statements that need to happen. And it's even actually not that simple because other things have, you know, bits of code that would have to happen. So for example, let's go back to our README example. This validate actually doesn't output anything in the body. It knows that it should update the request, or sorry, the method signature where request is being injected. So it would have to replace this and this. So again, there's a lot of things here that are actually kind of being a little bit difficult, right? Because validate actually doesn't output anything. Instead, it modifies kind of the existing method block, which again, kind of the naive way that we've written this so far. This only knows about the body in this for each loop. It doesn't even really know about the overall method or adding imports just yet. So, you know, it's a lot of things that kind of need to happen here. So, like, for example, to do, add imports. So, a lot of code. Let's see what's going on in the world. All right. So, it looks like there's some comments coming across. So let's switch gears and talk about those for a second, and then I'll kind of end up. Okay, should you be inserting request validated instead of request all? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, let me change that in the expected output. I like that. So that is the controller readme example. So the point here is that instead we could be a little bit cleaner. So instead of just passing in any old request data, we could say the request validated data. This would limit it to at least the data that came off that, as well as support any kind of callbacks that people might want to do to normalize or format that data in any way. So that is a little bit cleaner. I do like that. I guess the only reason all is probably a bit more universal is, as much as I do like validated, you may not always have this syntax, right? You might just do something like that. And so for those reasons, I think the all is more universal, so probably something I'll keep for now. But that'd be cool if you have a minute to maybe open an issue with like that suggestion, and if not, I'll try to add it myself later. But yeah, definitely a good point. What else do we have? Is sync media in the framework, or is that something that you're adding? So yeah, sync media is new. So actually, any of these names that we're seeing here, all Blueprint is smart enough to generate all of those if they don't exist. So if you're working on an existing application and you already have review notification, you can just reference it, and life is good. Same with the sync media job and the new post event. If you don't have these, Blueprint will be smart enough to make you a stub of that class with all the proper naming, just like you'd used artisan make. But going even beyond that, it can use bits of information to know, oh, I'm also going to receive a post property, so I'm going to set a field and so forth like that. And we saw that that happened last week in the jobs stub. So it actually does what artisan does, which is generate a job stub, but it takes it even farther and actually outputs information in handle and the properties if you're using any of these with syntaxes. So again, just demonstrating the power of Blueprint, kind of being able to generate all these different things. So, okay, cool. So I think validated is a safer option for beginners that might not know the possible. Yeah, totally agree that validated is awesome. I guess my point is that what's the lesser evil? Is the lesser evil to not use the most optimal thing, or is the lesser evil and to generate code that actually works out of the box, or to potentially generate invalid code that is opinionated? And so for those reasons, again, I think I'm going to leave it request all for now, but maybe make it smart enough that if you're using a validated rule inside of your action, then it will switch to using validated. And kind of to that point about beginners and education, that's something that I think is in one of the issues, is that probably after V1, I want to make Blueprint with probably like a dash dash, educate or dash dash learn, kind of option that you could pass. And it would kind of spit out as it was generating things, or maybe comments in the code. Not sure which one, but the point is that it would probably output some of this information that's like domain knowledge as I'm building this, and all these great suggestions that you all are kind of sending across. that, again, maybe we take for granted as people who have written Laravel for a really long time. And again, just the nature of this tool is probably going to be used maybe more by beginners to get a jump start of making new applications. So again, all valid points, definitely not disagreeing. It's just right now I want to focus on having code that runs kind of out of the box, and I'm definitely going to add on like optimizations and things a little bit later. So okay, feel free to send across any last minute questions. Otherwise, I am going to kind of recap where we left off and kind of share maybe some ideas and a plan of attack, and we can keep the conversation going on Twitter and whatnot. So the point here is that these statements are so like contextually sensitive that I just don't think calling output or doing one of these really simple approaches is actually going to work out very well. Because as we can see, even from something like send statement, which to be fair is probably middle of the line complexity as far as statements go, it kind of has to know, even if we wanted to do that validated thing when we output which data we're going to use when we save, well, we have to know, did you have a validated statement as well? So like, I don't know, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I feel like while it kind of sucks that this class would end up being super huge, like part of me feels like that code maybe needs to just all live here at first until some patterns emerge on their own. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think what I'm going to do is, for now, as ugly as it is, put like a really large switch statement here that basically switches over the different types of statements and generates their output and is smart enough to know, okay, you were this type of output, that means I need to, import this other facade kind of thing. So, and we'll just see where it gets us. And maybe it'll be a best of both worlds. Maybe it'll be, I still call statement output to make the output, to kind of allow some stuff there, but it's also smart enough to know, oh, you were a mailable, so like that means, this dot add, import, and just like, add the illuminate, support, support facades mail. So like things like that. So I could just start calling these inline. So I think that's going to give me the best of both worlds, is to really just kind of put a lot of this stuff here and not have to worry, not really have to worry about kind of passing this context all over town. So, and again, I don't think it'll stay here forever, but I think that's kind of the naive approach for today. So we'll cut things off there today. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for all the great suggestions and questions and challenges. I think this is good. It's good to see some excitement. So I'm going to try to keep these a little shorter this week, though, too, just to help maybe build up the audience, um, and go from there. So nothing to really commit today, as you can see, but we got a foundation for kind of starting to tackle these. And I think once we do one or two, we'll get a lot of momentum to kind of generate the rest, and then I can go back next week and focus on query and any of the remaining statements that we saw were missing. So thanks again, and I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place.